Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. As you are aware, this morning, the government of Barbados welcomed the President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency Mr. Nana Akufo-Addo, and his delegation to our island. So far, the President has had a busy schedule of meetings, including a bilateral between the two countries. So I wish to welcome you to this media briefing, at which you will hear from our Prime Minister, the Honorable Mia Amor-Motley, and His Excellency Mr. Nana Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana. The two leaders will make introductory remarks, following which you'll be invited to ask questions. And I just wish to remind you to state your media house and your name before you pose your question. I now hand over to the two leaders.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Good morning to each and every one of you from both the Barbados, Caribbean, and Ghanaian media. I'd like to welcome you to Ilaro Court. But above all else, I'd like to welcome my brother, the President of Ghana, to Ilaro Court, and to say to you that it has been our distinct pleasure to be able to have Mr. President and his delegation visit us in Barbados today as part of their Caribbean tour. And we are conscious that this for us goes beyond just a normal presidential visit. This is about family, and this is about two nations rediscovering each other because our peoples have a common heritage. And the more that we spoke this morning, the more that we became confirmed in our views that we have a historic opportunity to change the trajectory of centuries of history. So Hilary Beckles, the Vice Chancellor of the University, joined us, and he reminded us that centuries ago, Barbados was known as Little Ghana. He didn't need to tell us that, because in everything that we discussed, we found similarities. Similarity first and foremost of principle and philosophy. Our two countries value above all else the education and the health care and security of our peoples. That is the Barbadian way. We have learned that is the Ghanaian way. Our two countries recognize that we cannot go into the third decade of the 21st century without creating the bridge across the Atlantic. For the Atlantic must not be defined by the Middle Passage, but it must be defined by the return, which is in this year of our Lord, the year for Ghanaians to be able to invite those from the diaspora back, as you will hear from Mr. President. Similarly, we recognize that our future security is stabilized by that which we can control, which means not only our physical well-being and our development of our people, but also our ability to be able to have freedom, which is choice. And choice is determined in a highly competitive world by those things which we can control through financing the major strategic assets of our countries, to be able to create the opportunities for wealth and for sharing among our peoples. And we recognize that for too long, our countries have been influenced by those things that either come from the north or go to the north. And that in the words of Nkrumah, we are not interested in the north or the south, we are interested in going forward. In our case, our going forward is to do so not alone, but with ours who believe in the same things that we do, and with those persons who share the same ideals that we do. We believe that today we have reconfirmed that our nations are kindred spirits from the same people, and that we have those same interests. In very tangible ways, we have agreed to move beyond that which was a cultural, scientific, and technological agreement of 2005 to have an aid memoir completed at the end of today's visit that reflects serious action and progress beyond the bonds of kindred spirits. Actions with respect to transportation, both air and maritime transportation between the Caribbean and Africa. For it is a crying shame and scandal that as we go into the third decade of the 21st century, there is no direct scheduled air link between Africa and the Caribbean, and in particular between West Africa and the Eastern Caribbean. Similarly, that we need to be able to create the opportunities for both of our countries, our hubs, Ghana opening up the gateway to Africa, and Barbados opening up the gateway to the Caribbean and to Latin America, and therefore maritime transportation, properly structured, can be an area in which we find tremendous opportunities for cooperation. Similarly, we've recognized that the opportunities for renewable energy, in particular solar, and in that respect, not just the science of renewable energy, but also the investment opportunities for both of our citizens to be able to move forward to help us reach the goal of being able to rely more and more on renewable energy and less on fossil fuel as we go forward to help stabilize this world in the battle against climate change that is hurting us both in the Caribbean as well as in Africa. We've also recognized that the opportunities are not just in the distant future, and immediately, as many of you know, Barbados has been facing an acute nursing shortage, and we have agreed that immediately we will pursue the exchange of nurses and to secure nurses initially, but also agree to joint education of nurses as we go forward in order to stabilize our healthcare sector in Barbados. We have also agreed that the opportunities that have already been built upon by Cave Hill, University of the West Indies campus at Cave Hill, for the receipt of the first cohort of medical students from the 1st of August this year is something that we would wish to see expand, largely because those students will spend their first 3 years here, I believe, before they go back to Ghana in order to finish the MBBS in Ghana with the clinicals. In addition to that, there is no doubt that the historic, cultural, and entertainment bonds are strong, and whether it is in fashion or whether it is in music or whether it is in the establishment of sculptures, to be able to commemorate that regrettable part of our history, to ensure that those who come after us will be committed to making sure that there's no return to that moment in time. We believe that that tangible expression in terms of monuments is something we would wish to see. And then, of course, we address the fact that prior to, Mr. President, your visit, the government of Barbados took the decision to remove visa requirements for all Ghanaians visiting Barbados, because we knew that when they come here, they're coming to find their family, and we do not want them in any way to be hindered in whatever respect. Similarly, we've also agreed, and I announced formally today, we spoke about it in our budget, in the preparation of our estimates earlier this year, but during the course of this year, before the end of this fiscal year, the government of Barbados will open a small embassy in Accra as its first ever diplomatic resident embassy in the continent of Africa. And Mr. President, it is with this I say we are coming home, because we believe, as we have been told, that the majority of Barbadians are in fact descended from the people of Ghana. And I think you better than me can reinforce that comment. And with those words, therefore, I would like to invite you to speak to our guests and to the media. Thank you, sir.
Madam Prime Minister, thank you very much. And thank you especially for the invitation to come here and for the very warm welcome that we have received since we arrived this morning. This is my second visit to Barbados. I came many, many years ago when I was Attorney General in President Kufuor's government. And I came here from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where I had attended a Commonwealth Law Officers meeting. I came here on a headhunting expedition. There's a famous law teacher here, Professor Albert Fiajo, who has been for years at the University of West Indies, the faculty that is here in Barbados. And I wanted him to come back home to occupy a seat in the Supreme Court of Ghana. It wasn't successful. So it was a very brief visit that I paid. So I'm looking at this as my first real visit to Barbados. And I am the first Ghanaian leader to come and visit the country. So it's a big honor for me to come here in that capacity. Especially because this year there's so much activity that is happening in Ghana, involves the people of the Caribbean, that the opportunity to come here to Barbados to redefine and cement the relations between our two countries, find a platform which would allow us to accentuate and develop those relations, and also to allow me the opportunity to bring to your attention what we're doing in Ghana about the year of return. 400 years ago this year, there was the first record of the first 20 West African slaves who were brought to Virginia in the United States of America. And that was the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade, in which anything between 20 to 25 million Africans were forcibly deported from Africa, seized and abducted is better than deported, and abducted from Africa. And they were brought here and into the Americas, South as well as. So this is the 400 years of that act. And we think it is important that we celebrate the word, those acts. First of all, to be able to say that we're never going to put ourselves in that position in Africa again. A handful of European soldiers, armed European soldiers, can walk into this vast continent and organize the abduction of 25 million of us and be brought here in chains to work the plantations and other activities on their behalf. We have taken a very firm decision that we're never going to permit ourselves to be in that situation again. And we think that you are joining us to commemorate this year of return in Ghana would be a very powerful statement that on both sides of the Atlantic, the people of African descent have made this commitment. And secondly, to use the platform as a means, a mechanism for solidifying the relations between us in the eastern part of the Atlantic and you on the western part of the Atlantic. We think it's very important, CARICOM, ECOWAS, CARICOM, the African Union, individual states, Ghana, Barbados, that we use this occasion to solidify the relations between us. And fortunately, the discussions that took place today have been very, very productive and very fruitful. We've found it possible that in education, in health, economic intercourse, cultural exchanges, and a broad range of activities involving the cooperation between your university and the universities in Ghana have given us many, many possible avenues of progress and development and joint development. It's very, very important that once the visit is over and we go back, the momentum that is meant to be created out of this visit is maintained. And it can only be maintained if the various things that we agree that we're going to do, supply of nurses, this, that, and the others, all of them, we actually do them. That is what, therefore, will make meaningful today's meeting and exchange. For myself, I'm very, very committed into moving it, and I've sensed and I've had exactly the same sentiment from my sister here, the Prime Minister of Barbados. So this is what we have to offer you, and to say that hopefully from today, all of us will see a new buzz, a new statement about Bajan-Ghanaian relations, as well as the relations between ECOWAS and CARICOM and the African Union and CARICOM. So, Madam, let me once again thank you very much for the honor of this invitation, and I'm hoping for great things from our visit. Thank you very much.
I'm very confident, sir, that we shall. A few questions? Thank you.
Barry Allen from the Nation newspaper here. In terms of being practical, can you give us an approximate time frame where the original program you just mentioned regarding nursing could commence? This comes at a time when our country is in dire need of nursing resources. Do you think practically that can occur in the year 2019?
I think I'm in a better position to answer
Thank
that
you, Mr. President.
than the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
I know you've answered that. We have a surplus of nurses. Placing them all in our public health system is one of my headaches because there's been a lot who have been produced, and for several years I've not been able to do anything with it. So I'm going back. I'll be back in Accra on Monday. The week after, the Prime Minister will hear from me on this matter of the nurses.
And I want to thank you. We've indicated that we are searching for just under 400 nurses, so it's not a small number. And we really do believe that this is a wonderful opportunity of cooperation between our two countries.
Madam Prime Minister, yeah, Colvin Muncy from Barbados today. In a follow-up to Mr. Aline's question, would this be a solution to the 24-hour clinic start as well?
No, it's not a solution. In fact, there will be a 24-hour polyclinic with respect to those nurses that we have. We have a shortage of nurses beyond the polyclinic system. We have a shortage of nurses in the hospital. We have a shortage of nurses in the geriatric hospital. The desire to have a 24-hour polyclinic in certain districts is not about government's desire to pass records and to tick boxes. It's about being able to allow poor people to access free medical services 24 hours a day, because there are some people who simply cannot afford to do it otherwise. If we had enough nurses, there would be 24-hour polyclinics in every polyclinic, not just the Winston Scott that right now, by the way, does 8 in the morning to 10 at night. So we look forward to the amplification of nursing across the board with respect to our entire health sector.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Regina Selma Moore from the Barbados Advocate. You mentioned the area of renewable energy, and we know we've been leaders in that area. Could you give us some more specifics on what you're looking at?
I think that we've exchanged with His Excellency the fact that Barbados has had a long and distinguished tradition in the area of solar water heaters. If you go through the region and look at the penetration across the world, you will realize that we take for granted the water powered by solar and not by electrical generation in other countries. We also recognize that beyond solar water heaters, the use of photovoltaics. In our case, we forget that Barbados was a leader in the 18th, 19th, 17th, 18th, and 19th century with respect to wind power. It was just windmills in those days. And our government is committed towards becoming a center of excellence for research in renewable energy. We recognize that Mr. President, and he may speak to his own commitments to increase renewable energy in Ghana, but that there are opportunities for both scientific research as well as investment across our two countries. Mr. President?
Thank you, Prime Minister. The brief position from Ghana is this. As we speak, the generation mix in our country, we're a nation of some 30 million people, is 1%. Emanates from solar and renewable energy. We made a commitment to move that figure to 10% by the end of next year. It's an ambitious target, but we're working very hard and making sure that we realize it. One of the symbolic acts will be that the presidency, the house where I am, the Jubilee House, by the end of this year will be powered entirely by solar energy. It is a gesture, the symbolic gesture we're making. But this is the target. And beyond that, so that by 2030, the target is to have renewable energy forming the greater part of our generation mix. If you come across a country like I have today, in Barbados, that is already very developed in its application of aspects of the renewable energy sector to its daily life, it will make sense for us to participate with Barbados in seeing how that development can also inure to the benefit of Ghana. So we've committed ourselves to this exchange, that experts from Ghana are going to come from here within the month that is ahead of us to learn what you have here, to see to what extent the Barbadian experience can be adapted to the Ghanaian one. But this is an important commitment about the future.
Good afternoon. Lisa Broom from CBC, both Prime Minister and Mr. President. I know that the discussions on air links, it wouldn't be as easy as perhaps sending some nurses here, but what is the next step in establishing those air links between Barbados and Africa?
I think that the decision we took is that, first of all, we have, as of 2 days, well, as of what, Tuesday, signed an air services agreement with Guyana. And the decision we have taken is that we want to see how quickly that can be set up. And then into that, we will then introduce links from here, links from Trinidad, and the rest of the Caribbean. But as it is now, we already have an air services agreement signed with an important Caribbean nation. And if we can get that up and running quickly, we can then see how it can be extended to the other states in the Caribbean, especially the ones that I'm visiting on this trip.
Mr. President, at the moment, is there
Again,
yes. Is there a high interest at the moment in Ghanaians traveling to this part of the world recreationally as tourists?
there's a lot of interest. But then when they look at how the difficulties there are in getting here, they're daunted. I mean, their spirits are depressed. You have to go to London, and go to Miami, New York. I mean, by the time you're over, you're what, 18, 20 hours in the air, waiting at airports, etc. It's not exactly the way you want to go on a holiday. So, yes, a great deal of interest. And they're very much aware that over here they have plenty of people who are like them. Today, when I was inspecting the Guard of Honor, it was like I had a double take. All those young men there, they looked like the young officers of Miami in Ghana, the Ghanaian Armed Forces, Army. And I had to sort of do that to remind myself that, in fact, I'm in Barbados, not in Accra. So, yes, great interest. But the mechanism is not there. There's the instruments for facilitating that is not there. And that is what we are determined to put in place. And I think that when that is put in place, you will see then, in a year or 2 years' time, how much interest there is in our part of the world and in you here.
I think we agreed, Mr. President, that both of our ministers of tourism were present this morning, and we agreed that we would try to boost the awareness of Barbadians to travel to Ghana with respect of the year of return this year, and that we would equally seek to promote Ghanaians to come to Barbados with our We Gathering next year, and that the facilitation without prejudice to the Air Services Agreement, that we would look at charters to start to get the market going, because in the same way that Barbadians travel north to New York or to London or to Toronto, we can travel east to Accra and to Lagos and to other parts of Africa. And it is really hopefully part of the journey of self-discovery as well as economic enfranchisement that we want as a government to carry Barbadians on. And we look at you, we see how you dress, we see how Bajans are moving, we look at the fusion between our music, and I don't think I'm releasing any secrets, Mr. President, to say that I read this morning that you are a lover of carnival and calypso, and you told me you are a lover of cricket. But I've told him that in our part of the world, you cannot be a one-legged man, and if you love carnival, you love crop over too. Invite him back to crop over next year.
I'll definitely come.
So believe you me, I am confident that this is a case of awareness and capacity. We don't want 20-hour visits. We want to get there in the 7 or 8 hours direct. And similarly, we want to know that when we're going, when we hear somebody talk or we see them move or we see the music they want or the food they eat, we are home.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Mr. President, Ryan Joltz, Loop News. Prime Minister Motley, as head for CSME relations in CARICOM, one key issue has been the situation in Venezuela. I'm wondering, as Ghana is a member of the ACP states, has there been any dialogue as to the position there in terms of support coming from Ghana with regards to the situation in Venezuela?
Well, let me just say that the troika that CARICOM appointed the chairman of CARICOM, Prime Minister Harris, Prime Minister Rowley, from whose country the president has just come, and myself have been visiting a number of countries and have been speaking with delegations and representatives from all over the world since January, including the African Union and others, and simply making the point that the United Nations Declaration is premised on the principle of non-intervention, and that whatever else we do, the situation in Venezuela is a difficult situation, but that we must respect the precepts of non-intervention, as we've explained to the Barbadian people and CARICOM people over and over, but that we must promote at all costs dialogue, because we believe first and foremost that this region must remain a zone of peace, and that we must respect the right to self-determination of individual states. We have just had general discussions on these matters, but Mr. President, I don't know whether you want to add to that.
Merely to say that on our side, basically our attitude will always be to follow and support the part of our alliance, if you like, Africa, Caribbean, Pacific, that is directly engaged. If the Caribbean nations have a particular position, I believe that it will be relatively easy for ECOWAS and the African Union to support that position. So in that respect, I don't speak as a Ghanaian leader. I speak as one of the leaders of ECOWAS, one of the members of ECOWAS, and speaking in the sense of being able to transmit. We're about to meet in ECOWAS at the end of this month. I'll be in a position to give first-hand information to them as to the stance of our brothers and sisters here in the Caribbean. And I believe that at the end of whatever dialogue takes place within the community, it will usually be towards saying that if this is a position of the Caribbeans, that is a position that we will support. So for the time being, I don't have any specific proposal to make on that, but maybe the mechanism, the processes that I myself will be part of. You know that.
Prime Minister.
Thank you. Mr. President, I'd like to end by thanking you once again. I told the President that this morning I feel that we really have had an emotional moment, and I share that with the people of Barbados, because the clear common bonds between our people are patent, but above all else, the commitment to want to do by our people the things that will improve their access to education, their access to health care, and their security are absolutely the things that cause us to believe that we want to see the same type of world as we go forward. I want to thank you for doing us the signal honor of being the first president of Ghana to visit Barbados. I want to say to you that it is in the year of return is even more special, that it is on the eve of our own preparations for regathering is comforting, that you are now going to be the first head of state to, outside of Barbados's own, to address the joint sitting of Parliament this evening, is intended to be the signal honor that we want to accord to you, because we believe truly that you have come home. And I think that this moment will allow our citizens to begin that journey back home as well as to allow you to recognize that in spite of the winds of the northeast trade winds, that nothing can blow us apart or blow us down. So with those words, sir, I'd
Madam
like
Prime
to
Minister, thank you so much.
thank you.
Merely to end up that, to me, this is a dream. I'm in the country of Garfield Sobers. I am a cricket fanatic, and I love to. I saw him in my youth, never forgotten. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, President of Ghana and Honorable Prime Minister of Barbados. And thank you very much, members of the media.